Hello and welcome to podcast with Agathe Daae-Qvale, where I, Agata, with guests, will explore the human journey of digitalization. For those who don't know me, I'm an advisor in tech, and I'm particularly interested in how new technologies can be applied successfully. I've done this for more than 25 years, and since soon 10 years, I'm also practicing as an integral master coach with focus on human change, something that is immensely important for succeeding with innovation, new products and services, and with this distribution and scaling of them. So today we talk about my new book, Digitized Product Management, a guide to reinventing your business through digitalization. In fact, the podcast is an occasion for the launch of this book, and I want to speak with you just briefly about what it consists of before we head on to the more juicy part of the podcast. The book consists of 4 sections. The first part is an introduction, and it also explores innovation and the path of human change. It introduces methodologies and frameworks, and it is a bit of a softer part of this book, bridging the gap between the human factors and the digitalization that is sometimes quite black and white. The second part of the book is about the context of use case development. Here I'm diving a bit into markets, a bit into business modeling, and pillars of the path that products need to go to get there. The third part is different to the entire rest. It is 9 steps or dimensions, as I'd like to call them, that I believe need to be observed to succeed with new products and services in the digital realm. I'd like to mention 3 of them briefly. One is, of course, to have a good problem statement, to have a clearly defined problem before starting. The second one is about data, which I think is super important in the world today. Very exciting, and while we often have focus on the hardware, which is awesome, it is very often about what comes out of it and what runs on it, and what it provides for. That is the golden nugget. And also quite a big part of this book is evolving around value and value creation, where I encourage the readers to challenge the view on what value is in a structured way. So you can work with it, deal with it, process it, but still go beyond the borders that we usually have. And the last part of the book, that is on the navigating the technology distribution. So it's very much about understanding the context of technology and how technology spreads out and becomes an integral part of our world, and how we deal with it. And of course, throughout the book, I'm using a lot of examples, use case examples of how technology is developed, and sometimes it ends up working really well, and sometimes less so. And I certainly have experienced it both. So it's also a personal journey to get this book out and explain what I think is important in this realm. Encourage readers to think for themselves and explore different paths of thought. And in the bottom line, when I was finished writing it, was that this is what I wished every one of my consulting clients through the years would have known before we started working together. Because then we would have a shared view on where to start, on where to go. And we would talk about the same things in the same language, and have a shared understanding of the path that we venture on together. So that was a bit about me and about the book. And with me today, I have 2 very special guests in studio, and I'm delighted to introduce you both. if you don't mind, I'd really like to read your introductions myself, because I made this exercise of putting your bios into ChatGPT. And I thought it was wonderful to hear what came out of it.
Yay.
So if you don't mind, I'll start with that, and then please help me with adding some texture to it afterwards. So first, a warm welcome to Agathe Bélanger.
Thank you so much.
Here it says, ChatGPT,
Yeah.
it says you're an integral master coach. You're associated with Norgesgruppen, a prominent company in the region. You're also the founder and owner of Quite Simple Bélanger, a self-employed venture where she integrates her expertise gained from a master's in education, an MBA, and mindfulness instruction into integral coaching practices.
Yeah.
Agata has been honored with the Leadership Foundation Top 10 Award in 2016, which recognizes her achievements as a first-generation immigrant contributing to a Norwegian work, social, and cultural life. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It sounds so good, actually. Thank you, ChatGPT. Very nice. Thank you so much.
I'm sure it's well-deserved. So is it anything you'd like to add to that introduction?
Perhaps the last leg of my journey. We're always on a journey and we just evolve and discover new things. So I guess one of the recent tools I've been using in my own personal growth and with people I work with is yoga. So I've been certified as a yoga instructor this year. And that's one of the things I'm also using as a tool for our development. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Agata.
So let's move on to our second guest, which I'm also very excited to have here today. Welcome to Tobias Andersson. According to ChatGPT, you are a seasoned innovation director, open innovation advocate, and keynote speaker with a track record of driving impactful collaborations. As a head of Suprasteria Scale-Up, Tobias actively contributes to shaping the landscape of open innovation in Europe. Tobias has insights into corporate startup collaboration, strategic innovation, and the latest trends in the field. So, how do you think about that?
That is
do you have
somewhat
something
of
to
an
add?
introduction. So yeah, thanks again to ChatGPT. And fantastic to be here on the birthday of the book. So it's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I'm just delighted to have you, and I'm delighted to have the book out and things start rolling and looking up. So with that, I'd love to start diving into the material of it and about talk with you about digitalization and human change. So when you were coming here today, I thought, oh, what is the first thing I can ask you? I'm so curious, and I really like to be able to ask people questions and explore things and views that I don't have for myself yet. So about where to start, I thought, well, what is it about Tobias and Agata these days? What is in the front of their heads when it comes to digitalization and what's going out there? What is your preoccupation at the moment? If you don't mind starting, Tobias.
Well, that's a big question. But on top of my head at the moment is, okay, even though I work for a large company focusing on technology and how to utilize it, I'm not a tech guy. So what I'm looking at when we talk about ChatGPT or blockchain or whatever going out there is to actually, how could you harvest business value from it?
Yeah.
And I think that is the key right now, because at the moment technology is running extremely fast and it gets stressful. But what it actually comes down to is how could we interact with technology to actually create something that makes value for someone. And that is on top of my mind. And that is also something I talk to when I speak to customers, both in private sector and in public sector. Okay, the most important right now is how you can actually utilize or how can try out to get some useful out of this technology. Don't get stressed. focus on where you want to go. So
Uh,
that is on top of my mind at the moment.
That sounds like music in my ears. I'm sure we all experience projects where we start off and we may not know well enough up front where we start. So where do we want to get to? So this is definitely something that's also covered in the book a little bit, as you may know. But it's really interesting to hear. And how about you, Agata?
Yeah, I'm not a tech person either. And throughout my education, university, and career, then in production, improving the production processes, I must say I looked down at technology and digitalization a bit. It was like this necessary evil almost, I would say, we have to adopt to be more efficient and to have more insight into our processes. And what I think now is at the front of my awareness about it is that the more digitalized and technology-based our processes, our way of working is, the more I feel it's important also to remember it's all about bringing human beings together, enabling the connection, enabling the good dialogue, and enabling the kind of being present towards each other as well. We get these simple questions all the time, this workshop or this meeting, will it work online or do we have to meet face to face? It's really, at the bottom of it is really what we choose to believe in. If we go for it full in, and it can all work. So from this kind of fear of technology taking over, I'm very grateful now for what it can offer to us in every single simple thing that we're doing at work and as well as private lives. So yeah.
Yeah, that rings very true as well. I can add a note to that because I've worked with tech since the 90s, and I started working with what was at the time artificial intelligence in IT and industrial IT systems for production systems. And I started off working with what was artificial intelligence at the time in the 90s in industrial production systems. And I worked with project management later on and with management consulting. And I worked with IT for many years. And at some point I realized that 90% of the project work was really about human change.
Yeah.
Because I could come in and plug and play the technology and think that, yeah, now we're done. You have a learning portal. You do this, you do that. And here's a manual and run off. And then if I come back a few months later, sometimes not much has changed really. Things were just going the same way. The processes weren't changed. The way of working weren't changed. So that's why I picked up the human change perspective in the world of IT, because I find it was so important to have the understanding of change and how to facilitate that to make it really happen. So that, and also what you're saying, Tobias, is also a big part of that, because if you need to have a shared sense of value, of the value you want to create, and have a goal to make it actually happen. Yes. And it is really important to define concrete and tangible value up front. You can change your mind as you go. I mean, that is all about agile and and the way we work with tech these days. You can change your mind, but at any point in time, I believe it's important to know where you're heading, what's your direction, and then you rather change it as you go. So that is my take on it.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think you into something that's important here. I mean, the adoption of the technology, because the technology itself, I mean, it's not useful if someone doesn't use it in the right way. And look at the last years. I mean, when the pandemic hit, everybody needed to go on Teams or Google Meet or whatever from one day to another. That meant that adoption was forced. You needed to do it in order to actually get interaction with people. And then again, go 1 year back when we had about ChatGPT and the launch of that. I mean, artificial intelligence has been there for years, decades. But it was now when it was easy for almost everyone to actually sitting there and chat, and not chat, but put in some prompts, and then you actually, oh wow, you get something back. I think that is a little bit technology driven adoption.
Yeah.
So I think these two things, when we talk about digitalization, I mean, that's, people need to use it, and people need to see some kind of value of it. Otherwise you will still not, you don't have any actual incentives to use it.
That's a great point. And you also make me think of a story, and I actually have it in here as well. But I think it's funny myself. I was working with this quite big company, and in the oil and gas industry. And they were introducing inspection robots on production plants. And I don't know if you've seen like the Boston Dynamics and Theodora, these dogs that walk around, and they look like dogs, and they're machines, and they can look and smell and hear and observe things around them. And they put all these sensors on them, and then they run around and inspect, so people don't need to go into hazardous environments. And then when these robots were purchased by the company, people were so excited about them. They were super excited about these robotic dogs, which is super cool and super fancy, and you can touch them, and it's fun and it's cool and all that. And then I was like, hey, look, they're excellent. But the important thing here is the data that they harvest, the data, the information, and what you do with that. If you have those dogs without providing data, you don't have much. So it's about having the end goal in mind and understand, okay, you have data, what do you do with it? What are you going to use it for? How can that provide value for you? And that is not the case for all use cases around these days, but for very many, it is about data and information, because that is the end goal for everything that's being developed. Just like these microphones, if they're for voices and for the message, not for looking cool. So it's just how it is about technology. It's so easy to get fascinated by what you see and what you observe, but really you need to think many steps ahead and understand, what is it good for? What is in it for the end user? What is in it for me? So that's so thank you for bringing that up. Those are some very good points.
And I think the what you're saying, Agata, that these dogs were so cute, and it was just so nice to have them around. And these mics are pretty nice also. It's like the nice design to have this technology around, so it looks good, and we were like paying attention to that and welcome that. It's also important. Yes, it's harvesting the data, and it's being used in that way, but it's just this element of nice design and friendliness of its presence that is also important, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when it comes to technology in general, it's a little bit alienated.
Right.
Because it is often something new, and what does people hate? Changes.
Yeah.
So, okay, how could you actually lower the barrier
exactly.
to try something or use the dog or the ChatGPT? I mean, ChatGPT was because it was so easy.
Yeah.
You didn't need to learn any program or applications. You need to log in, have an account, and you can start. It took you, basically my mom can do it. And my dad as well, and he's the one who's struggling with everything when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
So lower the barrier, and I think that is how you create some curiosity about the new things instead of it's scary or you're afraid or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good point. It's I'd like to move on to another question following up on this, and that is, what do you think it takes to succeed with digitalization? You may start, Agata.
Yes, because I just love this part of the book where actually it's almost like you answered my question from 20 years ago. I have a story. I was responsible for digitalization of production planning. We had this wonderful digitalized solution, and the people who were to use it afterwards, they were even participating in creating it, giving insights and information and testing and everything. And day one, we go live, And guess what? Nobody is using it, actually. And that's why I love the first thing in part 2, actually, where you say start with the problem, and it has to be a human problem. And it has to be a problem that everybody, every single person that is part of the solution and the adoption has to have a relation to. And so we have to agree on that problem. So, the problem we were trying to address, digitalizing the production process, was about finance and about accounting and about production control and efficiency, where people needed to see the data as live as it was happening. But for the people who were actually to use the solution, they didn't have any problem to solve. They were doing their stuff on paper and production was going and we were delivering the parts, and they didn't really see any problem to solve, which was becoming apparent as we were supposed to go live and actually use the solution. And that's where I read this section here. Any problem driving a use case will need to be a real human problem to everybody involved. So we had to kind of backtrack and bring the engineers back into point 1 of the planning. What kind of a problem is it going to solve for you? Because you also mentioned, some solving of the problems can be actually related to redundancy and other things that are going to... what's in it for me, right? Is there something for me that is good? So when we kind of backtracked and people started to use this solution and see that they can copy stuff, that it's going to go faster, but it's still not going to be able... and not going to be possible to plan the production without my human input, as checking for exceptions and checking for mistakes and adjusting to different things. Then we started the actual adoption of the tool. And then all this data started flowing. So I love where you talk right at the beginning, identify the problem, and it has to be a human problem, a real human problem. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Thanks for sharing, because this is also the first checkpoint, like I mentioned, on the list of 9 areas that I think are important to cover. And I feel that it's important to work in this realm in a way that is detailed enough to grasp the issues and to grasp what's at hand. And everything needs to be actionable at the same time as it shouldn't be so detailed that we get lost or move into domains in industry or business. So the number 1 on the list is to have a problem that has a shared understanding. Because sometimes we think we have a problem and we think, of course, everyone understands this. And, it's obvious because I understand it.
And we assume on behalf of the others, right, to confirm these assumptions across the board. That's so important.
Exactly. It may seem very simple, but I think it's about more than communication. It's about that shared understanding of what's the problem and what are we aiming for? What are we going to go to? What's the goal? Because then we have some set points that we can work out from. And sometimes I've seen developing teams starting work without actually having a real problem, just thinking, we're going to make something. And sometimes they strike luck, and it's a bit like the lightning striking, because most of the time, if you don't have a real problem, you just keep walking in circles or getting to random places without too much meaning or value, because you didn't have a good problem to start with.
And to elaborate on what you both said, I think we are pretty used to, when we talk about problems or opportunities, a little bit like why, what, and how.
Yeah.
But we tend to forget for whom and when. Because, if you actually have to engage people to adopt or participate in something that is new, and we often, if you initiated something, you have a quite good idea, okay, for whom or for when it's going to actually have some kind of effect.
Yeah.
But for the one that actually going to have this put on him or her, maybe we have to be even more clear on who is the owner of the value and when is this value supposed to be, call it, tangible.
Yeah.
And I think if when we work with problems, also add these kind of dimensions, maybe it's a shorter way to get this acceptance in order to maybe do things faster or in a more transparent way.
Yeah.
Because in the end of the day, as you said, Agata, it's the persons that need to accept this. Otherwise, it's something, again, that is alienated, and you don't really have a buy-in on why we can do this. It's just another technology, or just another solution. And I'm see often when I talk to both managers or executives that they tend to forget this. They're like, okay, we're going to go this. We're going to do it now. And then they maybe hope that the organizations will buy in after a while. But that's maybe something that also have some impact in that things doesn't go as smooth as it might have been.
Yeah, you mentioned in the book, right? I think it was Gartner's assessment that 60% up to even 85% of digitalization problems they don't really deliver the value in the end. And we're talking about very simple things here, like, do you buy into this definition of a problem? Do you agree that we have that problem? First of all, is that a problem for you and for you and for you? And then, okay, how do we go about that? It's so simple.
Yeah, now those numbers are staggering, and it's and I've known them for over 20 years, and still
not easy.
And still, so many
simple,
projects are challenged. Yeah,
but that's again, I mean, talking about why you wrote this book. Okay, you
Yeah.
said about, okay, this is the book I would have wished that my customers would have been reading before.
Yeah.
I guess you have maybe some interesting experiences about this. Why or how would you mean that they should have been doing this problem statement even better? I know you're touching it in the book, so
And well,
it's a good opportunity to talk about it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for doing that. I think that's where you start. That's square one. What is the problem? And write it out and make sure that the problem statement is the same and shared by every level of the organization. Make sure that if it's for the organization or the business, fine. If it is for the end user of the product or service, fine. But know what the problem is and know who it affects, because it could be anyone. And sometimes projects tend to solve good problems, but for the wrong people. Like you said, for whom? Very good point. So that's why the problem and have that defined is at the first place in my world when it comes to this kind of work. And I also like to mention, like I said, that please feel free to change the problem statement as you go, because it's a saying that fail fast in Agile. And it is important that when you have the problem stated and then you start working on it, quite often you see that, the problem wasn't what you thought anyway. And this is what we often refer to as maturing in projects, that you see that the problem was something completely else. You start turning stones, you start discovering the environment and the context and the people and the place, and then you find out that, this is not what we thought, it's something else. But then you learn something and you move on from there. And that's also important to admit to that the world wasn't quite what we thought it was when we started. And of course, if you have a project that lasts for a long time, the world is changing in the meanwhile because it's changing fast now.
And that is also maybe something that is good that you stress or address, that, okay, the problem statement that we thought was the right one today is maybe not the actually right one that will be as most important, actually. But fail fast, or as I like to see it, like, fail cheap, learn fast. I think in the process, big organizations and people don't like to fail because we see it as a fail and not as a learning. Maybe it could be that this, call it the framing of the problem statement, needs to be addressed, that, okay, this is something that we actually could change. It's not actually what we actually want to or are 100% sure that we're going to solve.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, again, something you could, in a large organization, work with, because, again, to get the people aboard and maybe get more engagement on these problem statements.
Yes, it's a very good point. I see that. So, what about you, Tobias? What do you think it takes to succeed in digitalization?
In digitalization, I think that if technology is not regarded as the solution, but an enabler to create something, combined with innovation as the tool to find out what kind of problem you're going to solve.
Yeah.
I think that is where the magic happens. And digitalization for me is when you have technology, you have find the right use case, and you actually have implemented it so it can be some kind of value that you could harvest.
Yeah.
And digitalization for me is a little bit of a buzzword. So if we could work how to actually demystify what it is and show kind of use cases where you make some people smile, because that's what it's all about. You need
Yeah.
to create some kind of value, making someone smile. That's how I explain to my mom and dad. Innovation, what it is, yeah, you are creating something new that makes people smile. And the one who smile could either be the person in the line position that his or her job was easier to do. It could be the tech person that, okay, we did invent a new cool algorithm. Or it is the CFO that is actually saying, okay, top line or bottom line creates more money or less costs.
Yeah. No, this is good, and it makes me think a bit because I wonder what it would look like if we would have a workshop, for instance, where we did not use any IT or tech words at all. That would be a fun exercise to see what is left, where we take away all the buzzwords, all the lingo around the innovation and tech and all this, because then we're left with probably the human side, and that is where the value is. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, I have an example for what you're saying, Tobias, in terms of mom and dad and adoption and smile on their faces. We've been living out of our home country for the last 15 years, right? And I remember the first time my mother managed to actually download Skype and start her camera and see myself and her grandkids on the camera, right? She got it to work because she wanted to solve that problem of not seeing her grandkids as often as she would like to. So, you know, the big smile on her face, I can see you and I can hear you. And it's really where technology is just a means. And the goal there was to connect people together, right? So that's the whole point. Otherwise, she wouldn't just, go through all this trouble of learning how to operate that without having this vision of I'm going to connect to my family through that.
Now you're touching something really interesting as well, because I'd like to share that sometimes through the years I've been doing training for new technology. And sometimes it's a common conceptual idea that if you're older, that it's more difficult to learn new technologies, or that some people may find it easier than others, and that young people are so savvy with it. And I always experienced that it's not really like that, because every age and every segment are really interested in succeeding and mastering technology and learning something new. That is ageless. And what happens when you, for instance, use handheld tools to introduce new working processes, which is a very common thing these days. I've experienced so many times seeing that joy among grandparents who do use Skype and Zoom with the grandkids, and then they go to the training course and go like, oh no, this is going to be difficult. Maybe I don't understand it, and they're a bit like nervous. You can feel their hands being sweaty and being a bit nervous about actually, can I do this? And then they understand that it's very similar to using Zoom or Skype. Oh, I can do that. And I know how to do that on my smartphone. So then I can transfer that knowledge to my work realm. And that is a very cool thing to see, that the distance between the private sphere and the social media and what we do on our private phones is the distance from that to what we do at work is actually becoming less. The technologies are blending and morphing and there's a lot of focus on the user interfaces the last years and things are generally becoming easier to use, more accessible. So it's so that part of IT and technical tools entering our lives is also a very interesting area. So it's thanks for bringing that up. May I ask you a question about women in technology? Because this is something that's also come out throughout the journey. That yes, I'm a woman, I'm 50 plus, I'm writing a book on technology, and it's a new journey for me, but it's also a journey I have as a woman in different countries and continents working with technology and across cultures and religions and and businesses and domains, and it's all interesting and good for me to learn. But as a woman, I've also encountered a lot of different situations in the tech world. In the beginning, I was one out of few, and it's not so much anymore. But still, there is a certain divide and focus on women, on women's groups, on hiring women, on female leadership, and there is a focus on it. And personally, I must say that absolutely most of the time I've experienced it to be a positive thing. Also, like you, I don't have the formal education from IT. And I find that coming with that outsider's eyes or alternative view on something, it's always been nice to bring some kind of new perspective and value to the table. And I feel that it's mostly very much appreciated. So that is something I'd like to share and also encourage women or whoever to pick this up, not to think, oh, it's difficult or tricky, but to actually try it out, have fun with it, and see where it brings you. Because I used to have the idea that, oh no, this is too difficult for me, but really it felt natural and I enjoyed it. It put a smile to my face. So, and that's where I am today as well. But do you have any particular view on this, on women in technology, and is there anything that stand out to you in this area? Agata, you may start.
Yeah, it's my personal view on how, in general, masculine and feminine kind of view of the world can actually complement each other. The rigor, the structure of a framework, of following the steps, of having some kind of a starting point and the milestones and the goal is more like a kind of masculine or maybe what men tend to bring to work. And maybe that's why technology and innovation and IT in general has been more dominated by men in the past because of this kind of rigor that it requires for it to happen. While now, as you know, technology is going wild. I mean AI, and there is, I think, more and more pace as we're picking up more and more place for creativity, for innovation, in the sense of there is no end to how much we can imagine is possible. I like this distinction actually you make. Continuous improvement is more like the knowledge of what is and what can be out of it, but innovation is really like imagination and dreams and what is it that is possible that we haven't seen yet. And that's this feminine element for me. Like we need both, and we need to kind of make it complement each other and build on each other, the support of the structure and the rigor and the wild feminine imagination, as I see it, you know, it just goes hand in hand together. And is capable of creating amazing things, I think. That's my view.
That's interesting because I believe that, I mean, comparing men to women in these years, I mean, it is, of course, it's a gender bias. And it's stupid to think that either based on what kind of sex you have, you should be this or that. But what I believe, I mean, I've been working with the innovation and in the ecosystem with founders over the last almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing when we compare women founders to founders who are men, I see that women might have the same kind of problem they want to solve, and they have the vision, but they talk much more about this problem they want to solve right now, while men maybe talk about, okay, we're gonna solve this because of we're gonna reach world domination, or we're gonna go to Mars or whatever. And I think it's about mindset. Maybe men are a little bit more outspoken and maybe not so concrete, which of course is maybe more selling for the ones who are going to take decisions. And again, we talked about it previously. Look at the number of investments in women founders versus male founders. I mean, it's embarrassing, to be honest.
Yeah.
But what I love with this year that we have just been soon over is technology and women. Who is the woman that we heard most about this year? It's Inga Strumke, because she took ownership of AI.
Yeah.
She talked about AI as like, this is the thing, these are plus and minus and so on. But she actually took it and she talked visionary about it. But she could also, again, translate what it is,
Yeah.
and make it in a really good way to people understand it. And I heard people that reading books, it could be other scientists and really, really professional within AI, but it could also work for reading this if you're never heard about AI before. And I think that is cool. And if more people, more women in the years to come could actually take this ownership and talk high level as well as talking in these concrete words about something about technology, I think that's a key.
Yeah, that's cool to hear, because I heard her book on the audiobook in the
Yes.
car this summer, and I really enjoyed it. It's Inga Strumke is a professor of artificial intelligence, and she's written a book that is very accessible about AI and what is it, how does it work, and she explains it beautifully, and it's entertaining and it's clear. So it's definitely something I'd recommend to anyone who's interested, because she's done a really good job there.
And same back to you, Agata, because when I heard that you were writing a book about digitized product management, then you asked me to take a look at the draft. I was like, I have nothing really there to contribute or even understand. And when I read the book, the way you put it in simple words, the way you make it immediate, like it's right in front of me, what I'm reading about, based on your examples that you give. I can go back to my own examples from my own career and make a better understanding of what actually happened there and why, and kind of refer it to your framework, which is, again, both structured, but also gives so much space for everything that can happen, like revisit your problem and restate your problem and take it easy, and this is what you can do, and just try. It's just so friendly and so simply written. You talk in a simple way about very sophisticated and very complex problems. Perhaps because you're a woman.
I don't know that, but thank you very much. That's nice to hear. I hope more readers agree, because that's really what I intend to do and try to do, to cover tech and innovation in a different way, in a more approachable way, and to make certain things that may seem super simple when you're in the middle of it, but that seems to fail again and again and again, to bring them up and show the reader that, look, you can take ownership of your digital journey and your digital existence, privately, professionally. You can be proactive. You can make choices. You can use this for your benefit. You don't need to be a victim of technology or defensive about it. It really is something there for everyone.
Yeah.
So thank you. We're coming closer to the end, but I wanted to ask you before we close if there are any stories you'd like to share from your life, work or private or whatever, that is touching any other content of the book.
If I could jump in here, I mean, as an innovation nerd, where technology is a natural ingredient, I'm a little bit tired about talking about innovation, where lots of big organizations, both private and public companies or organizations, believe that innovation happens in a vacuum. I mean, it's so many corporates out there that has like, okay, let's do innovation. Okay, how do we do it? All right, let's build a lab. Let's hire some people. Let them work there in the end of this hall. And yes, let's cross our fingers that they will come out with a new iPhone or something that will revolutionize anything.
Yeah.
And when I hear that, I'm saying like, oh no, you start in total wrong end of this. And again, we talked about it previously. I mean, this problem statement, what is the purpose with do innovation? It's to solve problems or grab opportunities. And if these persons in this lab doesn't have any red thread to the organization or where the organization in general want to be in 1, 3, 5, 10 years, then that innovation lab or the people with the cool hoodies, they're quite useful. Not. You can kill that kind of innovation department. So my point here is that, okay, if you're going to work with innovation and technology, you have to be curious and you have to find the right use cases. And you have to be able to actually accept that, okay, maybe generative AI wasn't for us at this moment, but at least I have experimented and I have tried it and I have validated that at the moment not. But my point is that if you're going to work with innovation, it's not like doing it occasionally. You have to continuously work with innovation. You have to rig these capabilities that make sure that you are experimental. And this year was a Gen AI. 2 years ago, it was a blockchain. Next year, I don't know, biohacking, I don't know. But in order to being able to try out and experiment these kind of hypotheses or problem statements, you need to have this rig. And that's how you should use that innovation department or the lab or whatever. Not for innovation washing and brand image.
This is very important actually. And if I may comment, because last night I was thinking about this session today, and I was suddenly, I don't know where it came from, but I remember this sketch from Monty Python from the 70s or 80s or something, way years ago. And that I thought was very funny at the time, and I found it funny last night too. And it's about the machine that goes bing. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's about some surgeons that have a patient in the operation theater, and they have surrounded by all these machines. And the one they're really proud of, and that probably cost them most money, was the machine that goes bing. And I thought it was so descriptive. And this sketch is decades old, and still it is, the situation is very much the same, because the situation is very human. You get something, what are you going to use it for? You get a setting, you gather the developers with that are cool and hang out and can make these fantastic things. But what are you going to use it for? It is really a universal question, and it's so current. And it really, thanks for bringing it up and keeping it in the front of our heads. So yeah, and how about you?
Yeah, you went back to the 70s. I can go back to the 90s and say something very embarrassing. So back in the 90s, I was asked to deliver my MA thesis on a CD-ROM, which for me back then was like, what? And so I thought, I'm going to just wait 2-3 years. This phase is going to pass. We're going to go back to the handwritten documents and materials and reports, and I'm just going to deliver my MA thesis and graduate then. And of course, exactly the opposite happened, right? So I had to go back and do it in an even more advanced, digitized way back then, sending it over the internet and so on. And now that I think about it, as a coach, as a professional coach, this is like my main thing. I coach, and there's so much about coaching in terms of AI and what's possible technologically, right? And I just have to take this lesson seriously and know that independently of what you're doing in life, innovation and digitalization and AI is not anymore a choice or something I can ignore. It's part of everything. It's going to be a part of everything. So I just encourage myself and everybody else to get a kind of basic idea of what it is and how it's going to impact your current profession, your current life. Keep yourself informed and inspired, and it's for every single one of us, I think.
Yeah, and I think that is also to add to what you say, Agathe. I mean, previously we have been quite sure you need to learn this and you need to do it correct. But again, how about learning? Learning, I mean, that's changing now. Maybe now it's not the end goal to be correct. It's about to learn. And how do we learn? Yeah, we do fail. And after that we learn, and then we do something else better next time.
Yeah.
And again, if we're going to work in a world that we see like now, it's happened so much quick changes, and it's not only technology, it's macroeconomic factors and economic factors, and everything happen every time. And that means that the world is now a lot of uncertainty. That uncertainty that you cannot mitigate, because risk you can mitigate, uncertainty you just have to live with. So that's why I think that you need to, in an organization or people, need to rethink what learning is.
Yeah.
And fail is a part of learning, because again, we don't know what's happening. So we have to experiment, we have to learn, we have to fail and do something better.
Yeah, I
next
really
time.
love that. Yeah, it's not about being correct, like
No.
you said. It's about being able to learn and learn and learn,
Yes.
and failing as a part of it.
And that's why I
Absolutely.
love a quote from a friend in the innovation ecosystem, Yngvar Ugoland in DNB. And when he talks about fail, he says like fail is just the first attempt in learning.
Oh, I
And I
love
think
that.
that is
Absolutely.
pretty nice, because that's how we can rephrase what fail is. It's about learning and do something better next time.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And thank you for bringing it up. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you to both of you for coming and for sharing this time and insights. And it's been a delight to hear what you think about what's going on out there in the tech world, and also talk a bit about the content of the book. So thanks a lot, and I hope to see you again soon.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
and
It
happy
was
birthday.
a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
It's so relevant. It's so relevant to anyone, anywhere. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.